You know what time this is. It's time for WeatherBrains. This is the weekly show all about weather, episode number 640, the pre-show for April 23rd, 2018. This is an amazing time of the program. If you've never seen this before, we often do three things here. We share boring personal stories, occasionally extremely boring, humorous anecdotes, sometimes not so funny, and we say outrageous things. Sometimes they can be excessively outrageous. So Bill Bryant Peters claims he has no bandwidth. This is the guy that could steal Wi-Fi from if he was in Antarctica. I don't believe it.
I was going to say, unless he's, in some, plea deal with the FBI or something for all of his past crimes. I mean, he just run next door and steal some. There's a
I think we're being scammed. It's 50-cent beer night down at Wesley's Booby Trap, and that's where he is.
Well, he's still got a hangover from the Honda Indy Grand Prix of Alabama, I think.
Yeah, Brian does weather support for this IndyCar event down here, and he had an extra day he had to work today, so. The race got delayed or postponed because of weather yesterday.
Did they start back at 20 laps, James, or did they start all over again?
I don't know. I just don't know that much about it. But anyway, I know Brian had to be there again today because we had rain showers, but I think they finally finished it. So
that's good.
There you go.
It was a pretty day today with the rain and the clouds and the blue sky. It was just a beautiful day.
Oh, the pictures are rolling in on social media. Rolling in.
That was a heck of a storm at Fort Walton, wasn't it?
Oh goodness, man! I did on Sunday morning. I do children's worship at a church, So I got home, or we went to eat. And then I got home, and it just really blew up right there. When I walked in the door of my home office, I'm thinking, wow. I mean, the videos were just blowing into these water spouts and tornadoes on the Gulf Coast. Very photogenic, too. So that was exciting. And it messed my Sunday nap up. I always try and take a 1 hour nap. That's my happy time on Sunday afternoon. And usually I'll take a nap and I'll go play tennis. And I couldn't play tennis because obviously the pouring rain. But no, that was an interesting Sunday. So we got Kim, who's out. She's not feeling well. I think everybody else.
It looks like Rick's going to be here because he just gave a pick of the week.
Yeah, I saw that. And
we need Kevin. We need the accelerant. Even though we have to accelerate tonight, I'm sure he can accelerate on this Washington Post article that I didn't pay $1 to see.
Oh, that was a paid post. You had to. I didn't have to pay to read it.
Well, you must have been under the limit or whatever. I don't know. I don't mind paying $1 because what is there saying? Something when democracy dies.
Value for value. That's the value for value model. I mean,
then they are doing a good job. But I've got so many other subscriptions. I think I'd have to give one up to get that one.
You could be nickel. I see a lot of people cutting the cord, and before you know it, they're paying more for all these services than they were paying cable or direct TV.
Yeah, because at $4.99 a month, the stuff adds up. Yeah.
Bill, your bandwidth's kind of wonky. You got some people sucking.
I know. No, everybody's gone. I hope not.
It's just a little laggy. Kevin, what's on your mind, man? I hadn't seen you lately.
I know. Long time no see.
We're glad you're here.
Thanks.
This is Jen. I just want to test our microphone. Make sure you can hear us okay.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Hey, Jen.
Sounds
hey, Eleanor.
Loud and clear.
Hi.
Kevin, you have to guess where Eleanor is the MIC at.
Based on the flower in the hair, I'm going to say Hawaii.
Close. Other side of the equator.
There's there's nothing
The only
close to
weather
Hawaii.
service office south of the equator.
The only weather service office south of the equator.
National Weather Service.
Wow.
Boy, this is Guam.
No, they're west.
No.
They're still North Pacific.
I'm about to say they're north of that sounds that's the greatest trivia question ever. So now we're frantically looking at maps.
Why did I choose this episode to come back?
Now we all look like stooges here.
South of the
I'm the
equator.
guy that always gripes about geography literacy being a problem. It's a problem with me. Wow. So so this is a United States territory.
Yes, it's the only U.S. territory south of the equator.
Okay, well, that's a clue that we can.
Yeah,
Do a
Kevin
Google
is
search
immediately
there,
googling that.
Yeah.
What is the?
Good one. No.
Play Stump the Band
So-
tonight. Good job.
So now we're at Samoa.
Yes.
Good.
American Samoa.
We are
That's some-
the Samoan Islands are the first ones to celebrate the new year and the last ones to end it.
Oh, right. I remember that.
The two Samoan Islands.
How
So,
cool.
do you say Pago Pago or Pago Pago?
Pango Pango.
Pago Pago.
So are you ladies? Where
So
were
it's
you
got-
ladies
it
now?
Almost has a little end feel to it in the middle, Eleanor. Like Pongo Pongo.
Yes, Pango Pango. So yeah, at the end, it's like NG and the N is silent.
There you go. That's awesome.
So where are you ladies physically located now?
We're in Kansas City. We're at the training center. We're in a class together.
That's a bit of a culture shock, I bet.
So I bet you Rick Smith would know right away.
Oh
So
yeah,
Rick
Rick
just
would
joined.
have known.
He
I was going to say, I think
he does.
I recognize that hotel room. I think.
Wow.
Well, there's like two hotels right next door to the training center, and you stay in one or the other. And I don't know. If you're in the weather service, you end up going there quite a bit. So
Yeah.
If we see some of that artwork show up on your bedroom wall there, your office wall at home, you're
Yeah,
gonna be convicted
that's-
there.
I can only dream.
So Rick, what is the only U.S. territory south of the equator?
And it's missing its artwork. Is my
Um,
bandwidth going to work, James? Can you tell?
It's coming and going.
You want me to reboot my computer, or do we have time for me to do that? Or
just hang in there. We'll see if it fixes itself. So
Sometimes you
Rick,
can
what's
lower
the
your bandwidth?
only U.S. territory south of the equator?
A bill didn't stall long enough. I couldn't Google quick enough. So sorry.
Well, then ask him the full question. What's the only National Weather Service office south of the equator?
Guam.
No.
I said the same thing.
we didn't
Guam
know
was
it
the
either.
first word out of my mouth. No, we had no
didn't.
clue.
Hmm,
American Samoa.
yes. Okay. I trust you.
Any of you Steelers fans?
And they're looking for a WCM, and they want you, Rick.
We don't have a WCM or a Sioux.
Talk to me at the end of May, and we'll see how things are going.
Oh,
Yeah.
it's been
So
pretty
I
quiet
guess
here, hasn't it, Rick?
The language is Samoan
Yes, it
on
is.
the island. Okay,
And all
she's
our
going to
for-
read the forecast in Samoan shortly, James.
It's your show title.
great. Exactly. That is your show title. All right. So we got to wait on TV here. We've got 3 more minutes, and we'll get this thing started. So we're missing Aubrey. Where's Aubrey tonight? So people just sent an email so we would not get the email foghorn. Last week, Kevin, I don't think this has ever happened. We turned it over to Aubrey, and she didn't have an email. I don't know what happened.
Wow.
So now people have been sending in emails this week so that we don't get the email. I blew the foghorn on her. So
Oh, I see. I saw that note come by. Yeah.
yeah, so we've got plenty of email this week. Okay, so who else? Nate's AWOL. Where's Nate?
He
That's what I'm
might be
saying.
traveling.
Yeah, Nate's. For those that don't know, Nate used to work at WRAL Television in Raleigh. He is now a big deal overseeing the NBC station's weather operations. So he travels a lot. But we ought to just we ought to get him one night and just pick his brain.
I know he won't tell. I've asked him.
No, I'm about to say he probably won't say a word. It's too competitive.
Yeah. Who knew the NBC stations were in such trouble that he had so much to fix?
Somebody somewhere knew.
No, he's having a good time. He's just doing a lot of secret stuff.
Yeah, I don't think I'm not a traveling guy. I mean, it's all right every once in a while, but this on the road constantly where you're living out of a hotel and you're always in airports, and I think my head would explode after a month of that. Maybe I might be wrong, but I'm glad it's Nate and not me. He seems better equipped to handle traveling.
Mm-hmm.
I think part of it, I when I travel, and most of the time when I travel, like if I'm in a conference, I'm working. So I'm carrying my big bag full of equipment. That in itself is a nightmare going through an airport. I mean, they're going to stop you. I mean, they're going to take the thing apart and make you pull out all the wires and the audio interfaces. And the biggest thing is the microphone. For some reason, the microphone. They got to look at the microphone. I mean, guys, and then I get into the
Don't
motel.
they know you're a really big deal, James?
I was going to say,
come on.
Yeah. You need a picture of Ron Burgundy on your bag with that quote.
my home smells of rich mahogany. I have many leather-bound books.
See? You're going about this the wrong way, obviously. Tell these people who you are, and they'll say, yes, Mr. Burgundy, go right on through.
Yeah, that's not working. And then you get in the room, and you got to set everything up, and the walls are paper thin. And so I'm up at like 4 a.m. or even earlier for these conference days doing radio, just talking so stinking loud. Sunny and 85 tomorrow. That's your weather on 96.9 KBMV. And these people in the next door.
305 is banging on the wall like, stop
they're calling the dead. You got some jabroni in here that's drunk. He's just being a loudmouth.
He thinks he's on the radio. Yeah. There's your show title. He thinks he's on the radio.
So we get all these show titles before the show starts. All right. Well, welcome. Good evening to our television viewers. It is 30 minutes after the hour, and we are glad that you are with us. You know what it is. It's Monday night. It's WeatherBrains night. We are in the pre-show here, and we're about to get this sucker started. So thanks a lot for taking the time to join us and watch, and let's roll it. Hit a couple of record buttons here. Number 1, number 2. We record 2 audio tracks, and here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Hey, this is WeatherBrains episode number 640 for April 23rd, 2018. Talking about weather. That's what we do here. Thanks a lot for taking the time to listen and or watch this week. Rick Smith, it's great to have you. Missed you last week. What's happening in the world in Norman, Oklahoma?
Well, I hate to even talk about it very much, but it's very quiet in Norman, Oklahoma. We just part of the reason for being out last week was wildfires. We had, 400,000 acres burned up in parts of western Oklahoma, and we got good rain over the weekend. That's winding down, and April 26th is a big date for Oklahoma tornado history. If that is the latest first tornado date in the state of Oklahoma, if that makes sense. So the longest we've ever gone into a year without to have the first tornado is April 26th. So I really don't want to talk much more about it because I'm very superstitious, but yeah. So it's been quiet weather-wise, except for fire weather.
Are there any storm systems threatening this week, Rick?
Not this week. I think
so you may get through April completely without any tornadoes.
I think we could get through April completely, which would also be obviously a record. And I think next week looks more May-like. So we'll see what happens. So I don't know.
Next week looks ugly. There's a big trough coming out of the western states. Ridge building here. It looks active. Kevin Selly's back after a little absence. So you've been kind of fighting the wildfire issues too, huh?
Well, not so much in my DMA. It's been more so Western Oklahoma. We had a couple, near Altus is the northwestern part of our region, and they had some good sized ones. But gosh, Northwest Oklahoma, some of those smoke plumes, Rick, on the visible satellite, especially the early fires, were just stunning.
Oh, the pyrocumulus, and it was just outrageous.
It was crazy. But yes, nice to be back. We had some scheduling issues for several weeks, and those are starting to unwind. So it gives me a chance to come back and visit and say hello.
And be the accelerant.
And be it looks like we have nice people joining, so I don't think I need to pull him out this time. We'll see. It's always possible.
Say, you never know on this show when you need to start a ruckus. But
what I did get to do. Oh, I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
what?
I was just gonna. Well, I got to do something cool thanks to Rick. He hooked me up with a couple of people at the Advanced Radar Research Center and OU. A couple weeks ago, we have to do severe weather week here every week, do some programming, and it didn't really pan out the way I'd wanted. The scheduling kind of fouled up a bunch of different things. But the point of the story is I got to visit with some really neat folks at the Radar Center, and I got to stand next to lay hands on the prototype phased array radar.
Ooh.
Yeah, it's under construction now in that facility, and they're hoping before the end of the year to put it up on the roof and start testing it. And in fact, I'll make that my pick of the week if I can find the story, because again, it didn't pan out as much as I had hoped, but you'll at least get to see it. It's not anything like what you think it looks like, and they're looking forward to getting that finished and starting to play with it a little bit.
Did you?
They didn't have the
go in that weird sound chamber?
Yes, the anechoic chamber. Yeah, we started a little piece with that because that's just kind of a neat room, and we ended up over by the phased array radar and got to visit with Dr. Bodine. He just was very generous with his time, and so I'll probably make that my pick of the week.
Now, when you put your hands on that thing, the transmitter wasn't turned on, was it?
That's why my hair is thinning out. No, it's really neat. Look, it's got hundreds, or I guess even thousands of little square copper-looking radar dishes, for lack of a better term. Radar. Can't think of the word.
Antennas, what they are.
Antennas, yeah. And but it's on a cylinder. It's not, way back when there was some discussion of it.
No moving parts, right? No moving parts.
No. And there's a lot of interesting things that have to happen because of the design now, and they still got to figure out a lot of the math and how to handle the beams, and it's a neat looking thing, and it's quite fascinating.
Yeah, we need to debrief you on that because
and I'm going to get him on the show. He was real nice and very smart guy, and I'm sure he'd love to come on the show.
Ooh, and look who showed up, Nate. You're not traveling. You're home.
I am. Had to put the newly christened 2-year-old to bed. She was 1 yesterday, and she's 2 today, which means today's her birthday.
Oh, same as the new prince.
Yes.
In England.
Yeah, except she's the queen of my heart already, so she's been.
There you go.
Brother. Now it's getting sappy here. All right.
Wrapped around her little finger.
Yeah. Welcome to the terrible twos, pal.
The
it
twos,
gets good here.
The twos with the other two were fine. It was 3 that got us in trouble.
Wow. All right. Well, Bill, bring in our guests here before they hang up on us. We got all kind of questions for these ladies.
Yeah, James, we're real lucky tonight to have one of my best friends in the weather industry, Jen McNatt's an emergency response meteorologist in the Southern Region headquarters of the National Weather Service, and I probably totally butchered that, Jen. But you're in Kansas City tonight at the training center, not at the training center tonight, but at the hotel for the training center. So welcome to WeatherBrains, Jen.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you for coming on short notice. We've been shuffling guests here the last couple of weeks, and I looked up about 9 o'clock this morning and realized I didn't have a guest for tonight. And so I was like, so thank you for pulling me out of the fire. I don't know that we've ever had you on WeatherBrains, and that's quite an oversight.
My first time. I'm excited.
Quite an oversight on my part, but we're sure glad you're here. So, and you brought a special guest. So this is, we got a special too for tonight. Eleanor Luu McMore, and I totally probably butchered that.
No.
She's the MIC, and I guess that's still the right term when you're south of the equator in the National Weather Service, at the National Weather Service office in Pago Pago in American Samoa. Eleanor, welcome to the show.
Talofa, thank you for having me. It's a great pleasure of mine to be here.
Well, the honor is ours. We're really thrilled that you joined us, and we have lots of fun questions for you. So Kevin guessed you were in Hawaii when he saw the flower in your hair. We think American Samoa, we think tropics, and I guess that's probably true, isn't it?
It's
should look on my big world map here on the wall and see where you are. So it's
a tiny spot. You can barely see it. They moved the date line to go right between the Samoan Islands. So
yeah, it's right on the very edge of my map. So it's
yes.
west of French Polynesia. Definitely south of the equator. So that's cool. So how much variability in the weather, Eleanor?
Variability.
Like
How much
change in seasons and things like that.
Oh, we're in the deep tropics, so
So
we see a lot of tropical cyclones. Our main hazard is flash flooding, and then I think we're so unique that we also, because of where we're located near the Tongan Trench, we are given the okay to issue that tsunami warning for a local tsunami, because it takes about 15 minutes for the first wave to reach. As a matter of fact, we are the last U.S. position that was impacted by a local tsunami in 2009. Many people don't know or remember that. But yeah, we do have, it's rare, but we issue drought statements. But other than that, we do our daily forecasts, all zone for the public as well as for our mariners.
So can you give us the forecast in Samoan?
Oh yeah. So today, I can totally read the Samoan version of our zone, our public forecast today. So it's Talata mo Amerika Samoa mo ponane ematele inawawam naiti mo tapiai malwe fituvalu sa viliang ilalautasi e atulis fulu mailale tula mole asolua e atu polas faraile ematele inawawam naiti mo tapiai vevele valuono malwe fituvalu sa viliang ilalautasi e atu fulu mailale tula. That's for tonight through Friday.
Wow.
So that's a lot of words for partly cloudy with a chance of showers and a high of 82.
Yeah.
All of our
It sounds a lot better than English, though. Good heavens. That's romantic.
Thank you.
So Eleanor, what was your background? How did you get into weather, and where did you get your formal training and that sort of stuff?
So my first degree is in business management. I graduated from the University of San Diego, and then went back home to try to use that. And for some reason, I believe everything happens for a reason. Somehow got sucked into the weather service office there. No, I was not even a weather geek or anything, but I started as a med tech for the local office and realized that I can't use my management degree unless I'm a meteorologist. There are better chances. So I was fortunate to have an opportunity to go to Honolulu and graduate with my meteorology degree at the University of Hawaii while working there as an intern at the Honolulu Forecast Office. So in 2013, I had the opportunity to go back home and serve our people because they need the Samoan-speaking meteorologists.
There must be more to that story, though. You didn't just return and come off the airplane and they said, hey, by the way, we need you in the weather office.
Oh yeah, there's much more, but we only have like 1 hour to. And I want to also share the spotlight as well.
It's the internet. I mean, is there? You must have had some nascent interest, or everybody has the one event that got them interested in weather. Tell us the story.
Honestly, it's something more personal. It had nothing to do with weather. But when I was a med tech and I realized I hate flying. I'm so scared of flying. We are the only National Weather Service office that still uses MAPSO. I'm not sure if any of you remember that. It's still manual observations. And one thing that I took that really encouraged me was the fact that our observations, our hourly observations or our special observations really played a big role in the TAFs or, the decisions the pilots had to make. And just knowing that made me, the territory doesn't have a tower or flight services, it is us. And just knowing how much that plays a big impact and how it's important. If there's a plane crash, majority of the time I would probably know someone that's on that plane because, it's a small island and we all know each other. So that kind of started, it's on the aviation side of it. And then it just kind of built with the tsunami in 2009. Then with Tropical Cyclone, we are the only source for weather for that part of the world. We don't have a university that has a different forecast, different experts in weather. It's us in the Weather Service, and our people depend on us for that information.
Wow. So you really came with a servant's heart to that then.
Yeah, it's so important. And there's nothing, there's no price on just seeing how much, just putting out that watch or warning to our people so they can take action. You can't put those in words just to see how you've helped someone make that decision to save their lives.
And do you, now that you know more about how the atmosphere works, does that make you more comfortable flying?
Yeah, or maybe a little bit more paranoid because.
Fascinating. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, Eleanor, talk about dissemination of warnings. You mentioned the importance of warnings to the people there. Do you have weather radio? What other methods do you have to get warnings out to your publics?
We do have the NOAA radio. Unfortunately, it's still the older system. It has very little memory. We don't have a radar, but we rely heavily on our local partnership. When we issue something, there's a hotline between us and our emergency managers, and just that continuous collaboration, especially in the preparedness side. One of our main challenges is the date line goes right between the Samoan Islands. It's the same people, same culture, same language, but it's different countries. So when it comes to like tropical cyclones, they will be putting out a hurricane warning in Samoan, whereas for us it's tropical storm. But it's the exact same wind. We're following the US system. They're following something closer to Fiji and Australia. So, but it's really just trying to push for that outreach and letting people know what we mean when we're like, hey, there's a tropical storm warning out or a watch out. So just that partnership at the local level is so important, and it's a work that we have to continue to push throughout the year.
So what's the return period for major tropical cyclones on the islands? Do you know? How often do they come?
I don't know. It's really dependent on, a lot of it is dependent on your ENSO cycle. And again, we've just hired our 2 pathway students, and I'm very excited about that. We don't have a SU, but that area, because there's no university there, there's very little research that's been done weather-wise. So they're excited to come and do a lot of that for us, trying to learn from them as well as them learning from us and our cultures. I'm really excited. And maybe that's one of the projects that they can take on.
So is staffing an especially difficult challenge for you, or is it about like it is everywhere?
It is a difficult challenge for us. We are a weather service office that has weather forecast office responsibilities. But our regional director, he's been great on trying to push for that extra staffing that we need. For example, if there's a tropical cyclone coming, there's that one forecaster there, and then your med tech. And one of the difficulties is that a lot of our products also have to be in Samoan. And so, it's a huge challenge because we know all of the Samoan forecast meteorologists that are there in the world. So, and they all so that, we would love more people, but at the same time, we're limited by, trying to get the people that have the Samoan language, because the primary language is in Samoan. So, it's something that we're working together right now with our region regional level directors to see how we can kind of adjust the structure to try to make it work for us and get that extra staffing that we need.
So, Eleanor, talk about the importance of knowing the culture of your people and how that's different from offices in the States.
So everything we do there, it's all the Samoan culture is really important. For example, we had Tropical Storm Gita. I don't know if some of you have heard New Zealand, that it really impacted New Zealand and Fiji. Well, it first developed over us. So it kind of intensified right where we were at, right south of American Samoa. So we were subpoenaed by the the local Senate as well as the House of Representatives. And a part of knowing the culture, you go when you appear in front of them, because it's very hierarchical, the chiefs matter when you have a name, so, like when you start addressing them, it's really good to kind of know that language, the formal Samoan language, because it really, whatever, resistance or what they had, misinformation they had about what our office does, it really, knowing that kind of lowered it, and then they were more open to listening to what we had to say about what the Weather Service office role is in American Samoa, and how we depend on the local government to push the preparedness and the action part of it for the community.
Yeah, James has got a lot of experience dealing with those chiefs over here in Alabama too. Don't you, James?
Whoop.
Well, it's just wonderful to have you on the show. Anybody want to ask Eleanor anything special before?
I want to ask you about earthquakes. You're like on the ring of fire, aren't you? I mean, do you handle geological events too?
Well, there's always someone there we're still under PTWC. We take their guidance. But, there's always someone there to monitor all the strong earthquakes, because once it reaches our threshold, which is a 7.1 for a more shallow, that's our local earthquake. And if there's no way that we can get a hold of PTWC because, comms have gone down, or we can go ahead and activate the EAS tones for a tsunami warning for American Samoa.
How many tsunami warnings have been issued on your watch there?
The 2009 one, and that one killed, I think, 100 plus people for the Samoan Islands.
Wow.
And you had one in 2017, didn't you? Back in November. I don't think it was a 7 point something. It was a fairly large one down there. But I guess you get those on a regular basis. They're not that odd, are they?
Yeah, I haven't seen any other that's greater than 7.1 since 2000. But we've had those that are closer, like 6.5, 6, where you actually feel it. And a lot of our people still remember 2009. So they're already panicking and, trying to call us to see what it is, whether it's an advisory or a warning. So that's another thing that adds on to our outreach list, because our threshold is a 7.1, but Independent Samoa, their threshold is a 7.5. So there's also that difference in terminology. There's a lot of different messaging when it comes to weather as well as tsunamis when it comes in the Samoan Islands.
You said that was the low threshold. That sounds so high to me. That's a big one.
Yeah, we get excited about a 2.5 around here.
Yeah.
Yeah, we are trying to tell people that no, you don't just focus on earthquake messages, because if you feel like a really strong earthquake, for sure there's a tsunami to follow. So some of those, the separation in earthquake and then tsunami messages, it gets confusing on our level, and we're like, no, that works somewhere more in the in Nevada, or not necessarily where we're at. Usually they go together.
So Eleanor, is there a direct correlation when you have an earthquake? There's always a tsunami where you are, or is it like so many other ones that we see, big earthquakes that happen in different places across the Pacific and they don't generate a tsunami?
Yeah, so far, the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center in Honolulu, they do a really good job. They're really the experts in that, and they've already provided guidances for us to follow. And so those are the thresholds that we watch out for. There is this monitor that is provided to us to continue to monitor the earthquake activities, whether it's local or distant. And that's the one that we monitor, and then using those to apply to the thresholds that were set by the Pacific Tsunami Warning Center.
Do you have buoys between you and the trench that you're monitoring after an earthquake happens?
Yes, there's one seismometer.
Wow.
I would shift back to weather for a minute if I can. You know, each little region in our country has its own little forecast bugaboos. What are the toughest forecast challenges there?
Well, because we don't have a radar.
Well, yeah.
Everything is challenging.
that would be a challenge.
Maybe we could do a GoFundMe and get you a radar.
Well, yeah, wait, time at it. So you don't have a radar, you don't have a WCM, and you don't have a SU? I mean, Rick, make a phone call here. We need some troops in here.
Really, that's very challenging. Yeah.
You could learn some
Is this a permanent thing, or are you going to have a full staff, or do you operate normally without a WCM or a SU?
It's always been that way, but I can tell you that I've seen an increase in staffing since I started as a med tech. They've added on more meteorologists, so I know that's the vision, that's the goal, where we're heading, to add more of the staffing that we need for our office. We'd love for it to happen like overnight, but we understand and things don't happen that way. So we're happy to know that the plan is to add more of the stuffing that we need.
Wow. And when do you get a radar, or is that ever going to happen?
Do you have extra money for it? You have a radar somewhere over there?
What we can do, we can get Nate one of those fancy radar trucks he owns with NBC, and get them on a big boat. Get them on a big boat and ship them down there.
That'd be pretty great. That'd be awesome.
I'd volunteer for that assignment.
Can't you just put some pontoons on the KXAS vehicle, mate, and just yeah. So, the radar, no radar is obviously a huge challenge. But what about atmospherically on a day-to-day or seasonal basis? What are the things you just kind of go, oh, the forecast is driving me crazy?
Well, that's one of the things. Most of the models that are there don't cross the equator. So we would tend to rely on what New Zealand has or Australia. So that becomes a challenge as well. But coming to these courses, you get to network, and I'm meeting the NCEP guy, like, hey, remember American Samoa, and so we're trying to work on those. So one of the main challenges is because the bandwidth, the internet has been really limited. So we never had an AWIPS or anything like that. And now that they were able to give us that direct link to O3B, we now have AWIPS, and we're really excited about that. We're slowly getting there, but it's
now. Do you have an upper air station? Do you launch balloons there?
Yes, we're actually the only ones in that area, except for Fiji and then another island. So a lot of the countries around us rely on our upper air observations. So our station is one of the stations for upper air.
And have you ever issued a tornado warning for the island?
No, but we've had water spouts, reports of water spouts, and it's always been just people calling in, but we've never really seen it. I've never seen it, or we were never really able to verify it. There was a hail event on the other Samoan island. They actually took a video of it, and it's very interesting because it looks like it happened on video, but we can't ever verify that.
By the way, seeing some Twitter traffic. San Juan got a new WSR 88D in a couple of months. So if they could do it, how come you can't do it? Rick, you know people. You're a big shot. You need to speak with somebody here.
We need to talk to Jen McNabb. I think maybe she can help us. She's the big regional person. That's who we go and ask money from.
So Eleanor, you never issued a tornado warning. I bet you never issued a winter storm warning either, huh? So one last question. Tourism, Eleanor. Is tourism big in American Samoa?
Yes, it is. It is, but because we don't really have a lot of the infrastructure. I mean, we try to tell people, hey, we are the only U.S. territory there. So, all the U.S. people come there, but a lot of them do go to Western Samoa because there's more touristy things to do. But if it's on your bucket list to be the first or last to celebrate or see the new year, we always try to sell that. Come and go over to Independent Samoa. You'd be the first one to see the day, and then rest, fly over 20 minutes, and then be the last one to celebrate again.
That's actually kind of cool. That's a pretty cool selling point. That's like there's a couple of flights every year that take off from the West Coast that will do that exact same thing, and they'll take off like from the West Coast, and then they'll fly west into yesterday or something like that. That's always fun. But to do that on a 20-minute flight would actually be a lot more ideal.
Yes. So come to Samoan Islands. It's beautiful.
Now you said you don't like flying, so the question is, that's not good. If you got to come back to the States on a regular basis and go to these conferences and do the test bed thing and everything else, I mean that's a long flight.
Oh yeah, but it's more mental for me, so I'm more aware of that, and I think the more travel that I do, that anxiety lessens or decreases.
So to describe your path from American Samoa to Kansas City, how many stops did you have to make?
From American Samoa to Honolulu, because it's the only flight out of there.
And how many hours is that, Eleanor?
That's about 5 hours. Then from Honolulu to the West Coast, another 5 hours. And then from there to here, about another 5 hours. So that's just flying time. That's not including. And you need a passport to go there because although we are a U.S. territory, it's called an international destination.
Interesting.
I'm all confused now. Wow.
I don't know. I've got my passport. I think I'm going to check this out.
Yeah, give me a call when you come down.
I will.
Yeah, we got a friend in the islands now, Nate.
That's never a bad thing to have.
Yeah.
Say what, Jen? What did you say?
I said you can go take an observation.
Oh, there you go. You don't get to do that every day.
Yeah.
Well, we're so glad you're here. Thank you so much, Jen, for getting Eleanor for us tonight. This has been a real treat. So Jen, Eleanor mentioned partnerships. You're all about partnerships in your job too, aren't you?
Definitely. So I work at the Regional Operations Center at Southern Region headquarters for the Weather Service. So we kind of have two focuses to partnerships. We have partnerships with our offices across Southern Region, over 40 offices across the region that we serve. And then we also serve a lot of regional level partners. We work with 2 different FEMA regions and provide kind of their overview of what they need to be concerned about within the next week. And then we also support the state of Texas Emergency Management Agency too, because Texas is so large, 13 weather offices and 3 river forecast centers. So we kind of put together the state level picture for the state of Texas too. So it's all about partnerships. We don't really forecast in the Regional Operations Center. We are kind of combining all these forecasts from the locals and from the national centers and kind of putting a picture together for these larger scale partners.
So can you come do that for Alabama, Jen? Because we've got 4 officers and have our own set of issues over here when it comes to putting a picture together for the whole state.
Well, and I think that that is an evolving role and an evolving focus of weather service offices too. How do we do that for each state? Because each state has different needs. Each state has a different number of offices that it covers. And so how do we as a weather service kind of come together? What does that look like for each state? It's going to look different in each state based on the needs of the state. Some states have state meteorologists. So each state is going to be different in a different structure, and we're kind of working through how does that look in each state now. So
let me just say that's a big deal, Bill Murray. Here I don't want to jump in and get into this, but I can't use graphics prepared by the National Weather Service in Birmingham because they are only using the counties within their CWA, and nobody in the public cares about CWA boundaries. It means nothing to them. And state boundaries make more sense. And because they leave out a county in my DMA, I can't use it. If I show that map, they say, well, you're ignoring our county. And often I can't use the map from the office that serves that one missing county because their products are different and basically have a different message. And so it's the CWA boundary thing for us here. It's a nightmare. We've got offices in Huntsville, Birmingham, Mobile, and Tallahassee. So anything you can do to help us would be a godsend.
We're working on it.
Jen, oh, good. Tell us what's going on with that.
Well, we have some new technologies now too, where we can more easily produce state level graphics. When it takes a bunch of offices, a bunch of offices are already doing their forecasts in a graphical sense, and so we focus a lot on collaboration and consistency now in the Weather Service, and as long as we have a fully collaborative and consistent forecast across boundaries of offices, then it is easier to make these state level graphics. And that is something that we're really working on because it is important for those state level partners to make sure they get the full picture and not have to go to 5 different sources to get that full picture, or 13 like in the state of Texas. So it definitely is something that we're working on and working towards, is producing these larger scale graphics. It's relatively easy at this point to do it for temperatures and to do it for rain chances every day. But then some offices, we have offices in Arkansas, our offices in Georgia and Mississippi that are doing a little bit more graphics, more interpretive graphics based on the needs of their state level partners too. So it is definitely something, and Rick can probably talk about the efforts in Oklahoma too. It is definitely something that we're working on.
Rick, how much time is spent on collaboration with you and Tulsa and the other offices that you have to coordinate with?
Oh, quite a bit. There's constant collaboration. We have a internal chat room that we always have open to collaborate not only with our adjacent WFOs, but we can collaborate with the National Center, Storm Prediction Center, WPC, always with the goal of being as collaborated and consistent as we possibly can. That doesn't always work out, as Jen can tell you, but we do try, and it is a constant effort. And Jen was talking about the different states. Each state has a state liaison office, like the WFOs. So in our state, we're the state liaison office. So we work a lot directly with the State Emergency Operations Center, and occasionally we'll do a briefing for a statewide event and have to generate some statewide graphics. We're trying to do a better job of that. We need to do a better job of that for everybody, not just the emergency managers, but they don't care about those boundaries really.
Mm-hmm. But so here's the 800-pound monster in the room that nobody wants to talk about, Bill, and you know where I'm going with this probably. And I'm not fussing at anybody. I have good, close, personal friends, brilliant scientists that work in Norman at the Storm Prediction Center and that work at the National Weather Service in Birmingham. But they do not produce the same products and convective outlooks, and occasionally they can be different. And so how in the world do we explain to Joe Q public when one NOAA facility puts up a map that shows risk areas and another office within NOAA shows a map with different risk areas? How do I resolve that as a broadcaster?
Make a whole nother set, James, to create even more confusion.
Yeah, and just make my own up, and then we got mass chaos. And again, please let me make that. I am not blaming anybody here. I understand both points of view. I really do. but it puts me in a really bad situation because those SPC graphics are public. They are released to the media. They're in everybody's graphics box. They're going to be on national television, local television. You can't put that horse back in the barn. It's out there. You know, for years, they were kind of a private deal back when it was cells and nobody could see that stuff. Now everybody sees it. So you've got that. And all of a sudden, you know, the guys in Birmingham come along with different outlooks that are different. And so who do you trust? Who do you believe? And this last couple of events, it's been a big deal. So again, how do I handle that? What do I tell people?
Well, I'll say from our perspective in the Regional Operations Center, that's something that we're focused on, whether it's SPC or whether it's the rainfall forecast between WPC and the local offices. And one of the things that we do in putting together these bigger briefings every day for FEMA is we notice when there's maybe some inconsistencies, either office to office or national center to office. And what we do is try to facilitate conversations. Hey, we noticed this inconsistency. Let's all have a call and let's talk about it and let's agree on what we're going to be putting out. So we try to help facilitate those conversations when needed. And it can be an office saying, hey, I want to have a conference call with my neighbors and SPC to talk about day 2 outlook. And we'll kind of facilitate that conversation. So that has been a big part of what we do in the ROC over the last couple of years, especially. We do that with the Hurricane Center. We do it with WPC on QPF and winter forecasting. We do it with SPC on some of the longer range outlooks now. So hopefully you'll see an improvement in what we're doing as far as.
I'm thankful for the effort. And again, I totally understand where everybody is coming from here, but it is my opinion to be effective as a weather enterprise, we have to present a simple, unified message. Will there be variations a little bit? Yes, but the bottom line has to be the same. And what here's what I do. I just tell people, stop worrying about colors and risk areas and lines on these maps and just understand there's a chance of severe storms. It's gotten to that point where I just almost want to avoid the whole thing. So, but it's something we got to work through. And you know, we just got to work through it because I'm afraid, Bill, we were laughing. Well, you know, they're doing this and let me just do my own thing. I'm afraid if that's going to catch on, and before you know it, every Tom, Dick, and Harry doing weather on television is going to come up with their own convective outlooks, their own watches, their own warnings, and it will be absolute chaos and the whole system collapses. So I'm sure hoping that we can come up with a way in the next year to talk this out, maybe in some kind of a private setting, and see if we can make some progress toward coordinating a simple, unified message. Because any social scientist we bring on this show, they'll tell you that all these different outlooks and colors and words, it brings on total confusion, which leads to inaction. Inaction could kill somebody at some point.
Well, they're gonna send you to Pyongyang or wherever it is in Korea first, James, and then after you fix that, you can come back and
that's right.
Fix this problem. So that's really interesting because this last weekend we did have that situation, and you were, you know, it was Sunday for you, James. We were sort of on the front lines of the blog, but you were putting information out there. You know, it really was a difficult situation. You know, when you wake up and you got 2 different messages.
Yeah, and again, I look, John Hart and Rich Thompson and Rush Schneider and Bill Bunting and all these guys at SPC, they're my heroes. They're our Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, Kevin Laws, and these brilliant scientists at the local office. They're fantastic. So they disagree, and you know, it just puts us in a really hard situation. And I am not going to be the kind of guy that says, well, screw all this, I'm just going to do my own thing, because then that's when it totally goes down the tube. So again, it's just a matter of, and there might need to be a culture change. Quite frankly, there might need to be a culture change somewhere in all these operations where we have to be more flexible. We have to put down our egos and our power and our positions and just approach this with the spirit of humility and see if we can come up with a win-win-win-win for everybody, especially the people that use these products and services, the people that are out here in this Walmart right now. So we just got work to do. We've got some work to do, and we got to get it done because this confusion's not working.
Well, and I think also when you talk about a collaborative forecast, I think when you have more minds, then I think you come up with a better forecast too. So I think the more we continue to communicate amongst the various groups putting out these forecasts, not only will we be better collaborated, but I think we'll have a better forecast too. So it is a win-win situation, and we'll keep working on increasing collaboration as we move forward.
And that's the evolve.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's where the Weather Service is headed when we talk about evolve and, one National Weather Service forecast. So that is a focus in the Weather Service.
Mm-hmm.
So, I occasionally run across Bob Maddox's blog, Mad Weather, and he seems to have taken on the grids recently as a potential source of confusion. Jen, are y'all watching that on your radar? His conversations out there about the grids?
No.
Kind of interesting. So, the Evolve program sort of takes this into account, I guess, too, because I've seen some data at NWA and some different things that says, maybe actually the blend of models and things can actually be better than forecasters in the short term in some cases. Comment on that.
Whew. I don't know.
Wow.
I just thought we were going to have a nice friendly chat with some knowing
tonight here, Jen. Sorry about that.
No, I don't. A lot of what we deal with in the Rock is more tactical, and I don't have a lot of insight into a lot of that kind of thing. What's being done or what's being said as far as forecast verification goes. A lot of what we do is kind of just putting out fires here and there and supporting partners kind of in the short term for events. So I don't know that I'm the best person to comment on that stuff.
But it definitely supports this move toward decision support and this customer relationship process that seems to be very important to the Weather Service going forward.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Oh yeah. The basis of good decision support to partners is the best forecast that we can produce. So it's very important. Yes. That I think we work towards providing that best forecast.
Now, y'all are doing some really cool exercises with your internal and external partners, right? Jen, talk about some of those and how that's working.
That's really, I think, a really awesome thing, a big shift that we've seen in the Weather Service in the last year, 2 years. We've always known that our partners, emergency management, do a lot of exercises, right? We work with FEMA all the time, and they're doing a lot of exercises. And I think we've kind of taken that as a best practice, and now we're exercising a lot more internally, whether that's on collaboration, whether that's on actual briefings for our partners, whether that is practicing severe weather events and issuing warnings. So we've seen a lot of increase in offices. We had some offices recently, Amarillo and Lubbock and Norman, involved in a fire weather exercise with partners, which was really great, improving partnerships with emergency management and our fire weather partners in the Panhandle. And then in the Weather Service, or in the Rock, we, before the hurricane season, participated in a hurricane exercise with the state of Texas. So, we got to understand what their operations are a little bit better, how they operate, what decisions are being made in a hurricane, and then we put that practice into use for Hurricane Harvey when we deployed down there. So I think these exercises and what we're doing there is invaluable. We do them a lot for tropical training, whether it's with an individual office or we just did one down at the Hurricane Center in Miami a couple weeks ago. And that was a really fun exercise too. Here we had this course. We finished the course off with this big hurricane exercise, put people into teams, and we had the Weather Channel Skyping in and doing practice interviews with people there at the course. And we had folks across the Weather Service calling in with different questions to kind of practice how we answer these tropical related questions. So that was really cool, really exciting to see kind of a week worth of training summed up in an exercise.
Yeah, you reached out for folks to join in with that process in the Weather Enterprise, didn't you?
Yeah, it was great. We had about 15 people from South Dakota to DC, calling in to Miami for this exercise at the Hurricane Center. So that was a lot of fun.
But we're all really excited about Ken Graham. He's a good friend of our show, and I got to hear from him this morning on a bus somewhere on the Caribbean Hurricane Tour, because we wanted to. You were second choice to Ken Graham tonight, Jen.
Wow,
I didn't want to tell you that, but you were second to Ken. He's somewhere in the Caribbean tonight, so he was worried that his bandwidth wouldn't be good. So he's going to join us on June the 4th, we think, and
okay.
We're excited about that. But we're excited about him being in that position, and you do a lot of collaboration with the Hurricane Center, don't you?
Oh yeah, definitely. So for Hurricane Harvey, we were deployed to FEMA Region 6 in Texas, and we were also deployed down to Austin to the State Operations Center. So we collaborated a lot with the Hurricane Center and with our offices. And then for Hurricane Irma, I deployed to the Hurricane Center. We have a new kind of position that we're calling a DSS, or Decision Support Services Coordinator, that deploys to the Hurricane Center for each of these events. And you'll like this, James. We will focus on consistency and collaboration there, and ensuring that we all are speaking from one message. So as the DSS coordinator down there, I was looking at the briefings, I was looking at the messages being put out by offices, looking at the message being conveyed by the Hurricane Center, making sure that that line of communication was open between the Hurricane Center and all of our offices, and we were all speaking with one voice. So I think that position has been a good success story. We had 4 different hurricane DSS coordinators this past season, down at the Hurricane Center, and it's worked really well. And we've been able to help our offices, help the Hurricane Center with the national media interviews that they're doing, making sure that local message is incorporated into the national interviews. So it should continue.
Now, you were just part of the Effective Hurricane Messaging course a few weeks ago. Jen, talk about some of the takeaways from that, some of the best practices, anything that you picked up on while you were there that we can use in this coming hurricane season.
Yeah, we had a lot of lessons learned from this last hurricane season, just because an amazing hurricane season that we had. 4 different offices severely impacted in Southern Region alone. So a lot of folks were able to bring a lot of different perspectives on lessons learned, how they help decision makers with evacuation decisions that they have to make in real time, the amount of decisions and money being spent in a hurricane is kind of overwhelming when you're briefing. And adding on to that, I think tropical events are complicated. No tropical event is the same. I mean, you look at the differences from Harvey to Irma, completely different focuses. And completely different briefings because of those different focuses. So I think that's one of the things we try to teach at the Effective Hurricane Messaging course is how to make sure that what you want them to focus on is being conveyed in your briefing, and how do we effectively do that, because tropical products can be complicated. You look at surge alone, and it's hard to take all of that data and all that information and convey it quickly and in a way that can be understood. So that's what we try to teach down there.
And Nate, I saw when you tweeted something when you were at the National Hurricane Conference that an emergency manager said, put away your categories, put away your surge, put away this, and simplify the message. Talk about that exchange between that emergency manager and the panel you were on.
Not sure that I remember those so much.
Your tweets outlive your short-term memory.
Either Bill made that up or Nate made it up. One of the two.
Well, I mean,
I totally made it up.
You hear a lot about that, in terms of people fixating on the wrong thing. And I think they want us to, the emergency managers, I think by and large, at least if I recall the conversation correctly, that was the source of that tweet, was at the end of the day, they just need to know who needs to evacuate and when. And their suggestion was, his point was, all this other stuff, it might be important, but it's hand waving compared to the decision that I have to make as to, which area needs to be evacuated versus not. And if he could, simplify the message and just boil it down to that, yes or no, that the rest of it would fall away.
So Nate, you were part of a process of taking back some messages from the broadcasters to, the powers that be, in terms of products and things like that. Talk about that for a minute. What were some of the most poignant, most interesting things you took back in that exercise?
Well, I think the most interesting thing is that the Hurricane Center is listening. They recognize that over the last few years that we've seen some really remarkable gains. As a matter of fact, I've seen a couple of tweets in the last week or so showing the visual comparison of the cone from 10 years ago versus the cone today, and how, because the forecasts continue to get better, the forecast cone that is made based on the error of the last 5 years keeps getting smaller because the track error continues to get smaller. So that's really good. The problem is and I pointed this out, that the intensity forecasts have not seen the same kind of improvement. And if we could do that, that would really, really be nice. Rapid intensification continues to be a bit of a bugaboo, although the Hurricane Center issued for the first time really in a forecast for rapid intensification for Harvey. And it came. And if you think about it, we wouldn't have even thought to do that 10 years ago. And now that was actually codified in an official forecast that, oh, by the way, verified. As a matter of fact, it might have under-verified, but it was they stuck our necks out, and there it was. And that helped to give the folks along the Texas coast, especially the South Texas coast that we don't really talk about a lot, that gave them some additional notice that, hey, this is going to be really bad. Some other things that feedback that I'd heard from some of my colleagues around the business, I'd like to see that cone. Let's ditch the historical error and let's let the forecasters tell us how confident they are. There's some storms that we feel pretty good about, and we could probably shrink that cone even more if we're just talking about where the center's going to go. Other storms where the historical error we know is not sufficient to really capture the uncertainty that's involved. I think of a Joaquin from a couple years ago, where the GFS had it going one way, the European had it going the other way, and the official forecast had it going straight up the middle, which nobody actually believed was going to happen. But because of not wanting to play one against the other and having to windshield wiper the forecast, that's where we were. Knowing that we knew that was the philosophy behind that forecast, so you took it with a grain of salt. But we knew that it was going to be wrong, just a matter of which direction. Would love to. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I think one thing to note on the cone, though, when you talk to the public about what that cone means. A lot of people interpret the cone as being where the impacts are going to be located too. And that's something that we really try to message routinely is, hey, yes, the cone has gotten smaller because the Hurricane Center has done an excellent job in hurricane forecasting. But that's not the extent of the winds anymore. That
15 years ago, that cone was wide enough that it covered the impacts for most of all the, now it's gotten so good that you could live 100 miles outside the cone and still have pretty significant hurricane impacts. That was another thing, let's find a way to, merge the cone concept with impacts. And maybe even get away from this legacy cone product that has, taken we burden that poor graphic. I mean, if that graphic were a thing, a living thing, it would just be burdened with all of this stuff that we've laid on its shoulders over the decades. We need to give it a vacation. We need to let it go retire somewhere maybe, and come up with something that captures really both the state of the science and what we really intend to communicate there, which is, who needs to get ready for this storm. That sort of goes to the previous comment, Bill, that you made about, let's cut all the category stuff away. Just tell me, do I need to evacuate or not? Another thing that and this is sort of grand challenge type stuff, but, if you can't think big with the director of the Hurricane Center sitting immediately to my left at the table, when can you? And I said, I think something that we need to focus on in the next 5 to 10 years is figuring out a way, whether it's a combination of modeling, of mental modeling, of computer modeling, or what, but to try and find a way that when a storm forms thousands of miles out, and we know it's heading generally toward the direction of the United States, and I'm thinking of storms like Fran and Floyd and Maria and Irma. I mean, these storms that are out there for days and days and days. For the vast majority of the time of their life cycle, what are we talking about? Wind. What kills most people in hurricanes? It ain't the wind, it's the water. How can we scientifically talk about the water threat from a hurricane that's still a week away from landfall that we know is going to do more damage, both in terms of dollars and deaths, with the water that it brings, either from surge or rain, than from the wind? But yet all we talk about is the wind, because that's what our hurricane intensity, the Dvorak technique and everything else, all of that is based on, relating that to wind speed. We haven't connected those dots yet. But I think the computer modeling may be getting us at least in the ballpark where we can start thinking about, about that.
I'm sorry, Jan, go ahead.
No, well, and I think that's tough because you think about things like surge and rainfall and look at Harvey and look at Irma and how dependent they were on just a 20-mile difference in the track of the storm.
Yeah, that's why it's a grand challenge. I didn't say it'd be easy. And my assignment when Mike Brennan and Dan Brown reached out to me about this was think big. Everything's on the table, and so I felt like I needed to oblige them. Something else that I thought, here in North Carolina we have a system called NC-FIMAN, the Flood Inundation Mapping Alerting Network, where essentially they have run, first they flew the state with this ridiculously high resolution LiDAR mapping. And then they've mapped all of that to flooding inundation for different forecast points at different flood levels and flood stages. And so the result is I can go in and on a slider, I can adjust and say the flood gauge at the Tar River at Highway 97 is going to be this many feet. And then it'll give me a map of everywhere that's going to be underwater. But that's just based on the USGS data. Let's find a way to do that all across the CONUS. Let's do it, and in American Samoa. Let's do it in for both, storm surge mapping, because we've got the maps for storm surge, and we've got the computer modeling that can feed all this river gauge data. And let's fill in the gaps between the river gauges and find a way to be able to do the kind of storm surge above ground mapping all the way across any hurricane threatened area, to be able to tell people there's going to be this much water in your backyard. Although this is one of the interesting things about that meeting, and Jamie mentioned this in his presentation. Jamie Rome, storm surge unit leader there, mentioned that they started using the above ground level stuff, and that wound up being confusing to people who had gotten used to doing the storm surge mapping against the old datums, the different datums for everything. So that was just fascinating to hear. I guess not surprising, but I think the above ground level is the wave of the future, no pun intended. But it was still interesting to see that was something that looked to our community as being an obvious improvement, wound up tripping some folks up, and certainly wasn't intended to do that. But
yeah, it's all about the datums. That's what it's taught you.
Yeah. And AGL is a datum too, and maybe we find a way to give the people who want AGL that data, and the people who want it against some other datum, we give them that and make everybody happy. I mean, the computers now, we've got the technology, we can do this with just a simple matter of programming.
So Nate, talk about the 10% exceedance, threshold, and the potential for confusion with that. Is that rearing its head anywhere? I mean, I'm sort of away from the coast, but having forecasts for some hotels, that's interesting to me.
I haven't heard much about that. Admittedly, it's not something that I've been seeking, not information I've been seeking out. But I don't know that I've heard anything particularly concerning about it. There was some talk when it was introduced that maybe 10% wasn't the right threshold, that maybe it needs to be 20 or 25. But they seem to have pretty good results with the 10%. The response from that, other than a little bit of the datum conversation, seems to be pretty good. So I don't know that they're looking to change it, but I know that they are keeping an eye on it.
So that 10% represents a reasonable worst case scenario, right, Jim?
Yeah, and it's how you define reasonable worst case. Is a 20% exceedance, twice as likely in theory as a 10%? Is that a more reasonable worst case scenario? I mean, there's a certain amount of eye of the beholder type stuff here, but I think the 10% seems to be working fairly well for the folks that have been affected the last few years, and certainly we've had a number of opportunities just in the last year to see it. So.
Yes, we did. Unfortunately, lots of new products this year, Jen, coming out of the National Hurricane Center, and that, Nate said the Hurricane Center's listening. It seems like the Hurricane Center is also being very proactive, at least in my estimation, with a lot of new good products, getting them to market quickly, iterating fast, that sort of thing. It can't be easy to implement these new products.
No, and I think one of the things that they've done a great job of too is getting a lot of feedback as they go through the process of developing the products, even on the colors that they include, how the graphics look. They're working with social scientists to make sure that they're being interpreted in the right way. So I think they've done a great job of testing and making sure that they don't release things until they have the right. So
it's going to be an exciting year this year. Hopefully not as exciting as last year, but all the new products will be. Maybe we'll be really bored all summer. Let's just let's kind of hope for that. Jen, I know you had to be you had to have your heartstrings get tugged when you had an MIC tell you that they were excited about AWIPs, huh?
Jen has a lot of she's going to be training us soon.
All right, well, ladies, we have to take a break. I know that you two probably have to run. You've given us an hour of your time, so thank you so much. It has been marvelous. We have learned so much on this show tonight. So thank you very much. And if by chance anybody wants to kind of get in touch with you, do you have a Twitter feed, social media, something where people can get in touch with you?
Email.
Email. That'll work even better.
Hasn't really made it that far. No.
I'm on Twitter, Jen_McNatt.
Okay, awesome. Well, good deal. Well, thank you all, ladies, and y'all have a great time up there. Hope you have a good day tomorrow, and thanks so much for coming on the show this week.
Thank you so much, guys. It was wonderful.
Thank you, ladies. All right, let's take a quick break here. We've got Professor Peters didn't even send in a WeatherBrains 101 this week. He claims no bandwidth. I don't get that, but we've got Tony Rice and the Astronomy Report. We're going to come back with a weather roundup, picks of the week, and much more as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your Astronomy Outlook.
Not unlike the late summer sports calendar where we wait for football and playoff baseball, there's a bit of a lull in the astronomy calendar at the moment. While we wait for the next meteor shower or similar naked eye coolness in the sky, let's take a look at cosmology, specifically at the comings and goings of the planets in our solar system, mostly through the changing definition of the word planet itself. Starting back before recorded history, 7 classical planets were known to the Babylonians. The word comes from Greek for wanderers, since they moved across the sky against the fixed background of the stars. These 7 wanderers were the Sun, Mercury, Venus, our Moon, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. Galileo came along in 1610 and found Io, Europa, Ganymede, and Callisto around Jupiter, and he initially called these planets as well. Over the next 100 years or so, the planet family grew to 16, as Saturn's larger moons were added to the list. Those moons were soon found to be in orbit around planets, not just the Sun. This shifted our cosmological model from an Earth-centered to a Sun-centered one, shrinking the list of planets down to 6. In 1781, Uranus was discovered. Several asteroids were found and considered planets as well, until Neptune brought the list up to 13 in 1846. More asteroids were added, and the solar system ultimately grew to its largest in 1850 at 21 members. All asteroids were demoted soon thereafter, rightfully so, and the planetary club remained at 7 until Clyde Tombaugh found a faint dot of light moving between images taken a few days apart. He liked the name Pluto, suggested by an 11-year-old from Oxford, England, and the solar system of 8 plus Earth that most of us learned in school was set. But throughout all of this, the word planet was the most poorly defined word that we were all sure that we knew the definition of. By 2005, technology advanced to the point where rocks past Neptune were getting easier to find. the International Astronomical Union, the AMS and NWA of astronomy, recognized that something had to give. If the word planet didn't get a more clear definition, membership in the solar system was about to explode. The rules ultimately approved by IAU members are: a planet is in orbit around the sun, has sufficient mass to form a nearly round shape through its own gravity, and has cleared the neighborhood around its orbit. Get sentimental about Pluto's demotion all you want, but the clarification of what is and isn't a planet was very necessary. Had that consensus not been reached at the 2006 IAU General Assembly in Prague, today we could have more than 200 planets. And there's not a good mnemonic for remembering all those. But my very easy memory jingle seems useless now. That's your Astronomy Outlook. Follow me in RTP Hokey for more spacey stuff like this.
When the weather ball is red, warmer weather is ahead. When the weather ball is white, colder weather is in sight. When the weather ball is green, no change in the weather is foreseen. When colors blink, by night or day, precipitation's on the way.
We were doing this show on April 23rd, 2018. Nate, did you have any severe weather today?
We did not. We had some scattered showers around the area here and there. I've got another batch of rain heading in right now, and looking at the HER, the NAM, the WRF, the GFS, the Euro, the SREF, the plumes. It's going to rain tomorrow.
Good choice. Good choice. We had a marginal risk day here yesterday, and goodness, it was a tornado bonanza on the Gulf Coast. We had water spouts, tornadoes galore on the central Gulf Coast, and pretty active day. And up on our end of the state, we had some pretty heavy rain. So let's see what Kevin's doing out there. Kevin, how's the weather in Wichita Falls, Texas?
We got nothing like Rick. You know, we had a good soaking, which we needed on Saturday, but it was nice. I mean, it was heavy rain at times, but we got about 1.2, I think, and no severe weather. It's just been very quiet. I hear rumbling.
I got to enjoy part of that rain, by the way. I was in Norman this past weekend for the National Weather Association Council mid-year meeting, and woke up Saturday morning about 10 minutes before my alarm went off with just a nice steady rain, occasional gust of wind, and a little bit of rolling thunder across the plains. It was very pleasant. I enjoyed it very much.
That's my favorite thing, to sit in my garage and watch it rain like that. But Rick, I'm starting to hear some grumbling on some of the chaser, side that there's not much action.
Yeah, and it's, by the way, it's so rare to be able to get in mid to late April a little bit of thunder, some rain, and not have to worry about craziness going on. So it was wonderful.
I've seen a couple people say, "Oh, quiet in April. That means an active May."
It means nothing. It means absolutely nothing. Nothing. I mean,
You want to think about it a little?
No, okay. I'm prepared. I'm armed for this. No, we've some of our worst years have started off very quiet. There is no correlation between the beginning of our quote tornado season and what happens in May. It only takes one day, one storm. So yeah, I'm not. Everybody's writing the season off, but we're not there yet.
A little wish casting, perhaps.
Yes. Yeah.
So again, Bill Murray, I guess we just down here it's kind of quiet this week. There's a large upper low that's north of us producing some cold core, showers. These little hailers up near the core of this thing, but nice and quiet. And we're coming up on.
That low really took off last night. Late yesterday afternoon, last night it was deepening rapidly. I don't know what it ended up today, but. It was dropping pretty quickly as it went up the Alabama-Mississippi border yesterday. It was interesting to watch.
We're coming up on the, 7th anniversary of the generational tornado outbreak here of April 27th, 2011. And every year we kind of watch that day because you don't want to have to go through a severe weather day, and it looks like Friday should be pretty quiet here, maybe a few showers, but that's coming up on Friday. So let's do, and again, Aubrey is not here. A lot of people emailed us, and we're thankful for that, because for the first time ever, I blew a foghorn on Aubrey because she had no email. I cannot recall that happening before.
So you made her mad.
Her feeling she didn't come back.
I have crushed her feelings. I feel horrible about that. But we thank you for all the email, and we'll do a double email segment next week. But let's do picks of the week. These are websites or something to do with weather. And so let's start with Rick Smith for his pick of the week.
My pick of the week is a little bit different. This is specifically geared toward all of our operational meteorologists who listen or watch, or our meteorology students. Very interesting survey from my friend Matt Bolton, who's looking at kind of the well-being of meteorologists, the health, the mental health, physical health of meteorologists. You know, we have hard jobs, and a lot of people don't think about the stress and the mental stress and things like that go into our jobs. So this is a first survey I've seen that really starts to dig into that. This is something that we're getting more involved in and interested in the Weather Service, and it's long overdue. And so this survey, I think, is a pretty interesting way to capture some data on that.
I went through this, Rick. It's pretty deep stuff. I mean, flesh it out a little bit. This was precipitated by some level of concern, right?
Well, there is an increasing awareness and concern that, you know, this it's not just first responders who have critical incident stress and PTSD. Meteorologists, broadcast meteorologists, Weather Service meteorologists have this too. And there's been we're getting more and more awareness of that. So there's a move within the Weather Service to raise awareness, to do some training. We did some special training in our building a couple of weeks ago called psychological first aid for people that go out and do damage surveys. So it's something you're going to be hearing a lot more about.
What were the highlights of that event?
Well, it was really, a lot of the training was geared toward helping us communicate with the people that we're talking to, helping us deal with the survivors that are there when we're walking around doing a damage survey. So listening to them, knowing what to say, what not to say, being ready for certain situations. It was very interesting.
What do you not say?
Things like, I know how you feel. I know how you must have felt when this tornado hit your house, or you don't want to. It was really interesting because we just, as scientists, ask questions. We're out there. Well, were you here in the house when the tornado hit? Where did you take shelter? And the mental health professionals tell us that sometimes that can be dangerous to ask. You may trigger something. If you're asking someone to relive a traumatic event, it may trigger something in certain people, that a place you don't want to go and they don't want to go. So It's really interesting. We're going to do more of it. We're going to do more, and eventually want to share this with our prestigious media partners in our area too, because you guys go through some of the same stuff.
It sounds like some of that could be extended to some of the news people as well, right?
Absolutely.
Like don't ask if it came without warning.
Well, that's a whole other class.
Okay.
There's actually a talk at the AMS during one of the presidential forums by Christina Crow, who's in Kansas City with the Weather Service, talking about her experience with critical incident stress, and how this is sort of opening up for the Weather Service as something that they recognize is a legitimate and serious health concern for some of their forecasters. It's a really good talk, Kevin, if you want to learn a little bit more about it and about sort of what's prompting this survey. It's worth checking out.
I'm working with Christina on a lot of this, and I don't know if the recordings are, but I have to look. But the Mississippi State Severe Weather Symposium, I did a presentation on this topic there, so I'll have to see if those links are up. And anyway, it's something that doesn't get talked about much or enough, but you're going to be hearing a lot more about it.
Very interesting.
You know, JB shares a story, and we all laugh at it. We can laugh at it now. This happened in 1974, but during the super outbreak, they had a communicator at the Weather Service office that basically melted down. And, but people now have no idea what communication was like in 1974. You were feeding these punch tapes into these old teletype machines, these mechanical teletype machines. That's how warnings were issued. And understand, this was a generational event. These things happen about every 40 years. It was the middle of the super outbreak. In the middle of the night, the guy just freaked out. He grabbed a bunch of these tapes and put them over his head and started screaming at the top of his lungs. And there is a level of stress that people don't understand, and we've all experienced it, everybody on this show. But that's an example of, this is not a new problem, and I think we've never talked about it before.
Right.
And I think the fact that we are talking about it's a pretty good thing, because it's sure going to happen again, Rick.
Yeah, absolutely. And as meteorologists, a lot of people don't think about this. We're like, I'm not a fireman. I have no right to say I'm stressed about this. My house didn't get hit by the tornado, but it does. I mean, we're living these events. There's something called vicarious trauma that we have, where we're not affected by it. Our house wasn't hit, but we're living the event. I mean, we're living and breathing this event for days and hours, and then through it, and we're dealing with before, during, and after. So, and it doesn't have to be a tornado outbreak. It can be a wildfire. It can be a missed snow forecast, a hurricane near. It affects all of us. So I'm excited to hear that we're talking about it, at least.
Yeah, and it sounds silly to say it, but I see this go by, with some frequency. You get into an event, and the television people have to deal with something as dopey as is Dancing with the Stars on, and how am I going to deal with that?
Yeah. And all the criticism. I mean, we could go on. We need to do a show about this sometime.
Yeah.
Concur.
And I think if you go back and listen to this show on episode 275, which was the first show after April 27th, 2011, we were not all there. That was a very different show. You heard every emotion on that show. You heard anger, you heard some lashing out, you heard others that were withdrawn, some were depressed, and I think that episode is a good example of how this stuff really affects us. But we got to move on here because time is of the essence.
Uh-oh.
Probably means it's on my end.
The you're back now.
Okay, yeah, I think the bandwidth died here. Sorry, Kevin, go ahead.
No, I was just saying you disappeared for 20 seconds at least.
Yeah, it was on my. The rat stopped in the wheel back here. Kevin, what's your pick of the week?
Pick of the week. I mentioned earlier, I found a link to this isn't an in-depth piece, but if you want to see the phased array prototype in the lab that's on the way to being completed, it's in this little package.
Awesome. Good deal. Let's see. My pick of the week, it is an article from the Capitol Weather Gang. Trump administration official says it's a, quote, top priority, unquote, to improve U.S. weather forecasting model. And there's some pretty interesting little tidbits in this thing, and it's a long piece by Jason Samenow. But anyway, the link is going to be on the show notes on weatherbrains.com. Let's see. Nate, what you got for us this week?
I've got a double pick. I got the one that I sent and then another one. One that I sent was a short read about Lieutenant Colonel William Rankin, who ejected from his airplane at 40,000 feet, descended through a thunderstorm and ascended and descended, ascended and everything. 40 minutes later, he lands on the ground with a story to tell. Probably the only person to live through parachuting through a thunderstorm, and it's in lightning read. It's actually a book that he wrote about it, but it's a short version of that. Will probably whet your appetite for the book. The sort of bonus pick is a new website called SatSquatch.
Oh yeah, it's nice.
SatSquatch.com. So we've had a couple of WeatherBrains alumni working on that over the last couple of years. It went live today, and it's a GOES data viewer. It's pretty slick. Probably the closest thing to radar scope for GOES data that we've seen yet. It's all web-based. Don't need to download an app or anything for it. You get the basic bands for free and then some derived stuff for $5 a month.
Have you subscried, Nate? Did you?
I went on ahead and did for a month at least, just to play with it a little bit, but it's pretty slick. The Real Earth app from University of Wisconsin is very nice. It's very, very well. there's a ton of data in it. The problem is I just find it unwieldy and slow for what I need to do. And this seems to be a little more my speed, a little faster. And
I liked this one. Just it sounds silly, but just the highway and county integration is among the best I've seen. Which is, you're talking about such great resolution on that satellite, and it's nice to have the counties there.
Yeah, and it's pretty cool to be able to. There's a button where you can go in and pull any of the different loaded in sectors. So as they move the mesosectors around, you can just go in and one click will take you straight there. Can't wait to start getting the GOES S data, GOES 17 in there here shortly, and to begin taking a look at that too.
Awesome. All right, Bill, what you got for us this week?
Well, this is the test of the WeatherBrains Pick of the Week foghorn to make sure it's continuing to work.
No, he can have mine.
We have to make sure it's in working order. My pick, James, actually are all the great guests coming up in future weeks. We have to replace next week's guest again, so we may be to the bronze level on the backup guest for next week. So the Sasquatch people better stay close to the phone. We have the LSU people in the big Mississippi River model on the 7th. We've got the author of the book about Werner Sumi, the life and work of the founder of satellite meteorology, on the 14th. We're going to do a joint show with Tim Vasquez on the 21st, because I'm sure, Rick, your bad weather will have returned to Oklahoma by then. And then on the 29th, we'll have Max Mayfield and Brian Norcross as we gear up for hurricane season. And we just found out today we should have tentatively the new director of the National Hurricane Center, Ken Graham, on the 4th. And on June the 11th, now everybody be nice, so he'll show up. Peter Geiger, the editor of the Farmer's Almanac, will be our guest. So
wow,
everybody be nice that night.
Will be nice. All right, guys, I must get in the old television studio here. WeatherBrains is typically on the air every Monday night at 9:30 Eastern, 8:30 Central. That's when it starts. For those that watch live, they most often watch at live.bigbrainsmedia.com, but we know most of you listen to the podcast version. If you want to get in touch with us, the email address, it is email@weatherbrains.com. All of our social media accounts are up on that website as well. So on behalf of the entire WeatherBrains crew, I'm James Spann. Thank you for watching or listening. Have a great week and God bless. All right, gang. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Good show. It was fun tonight. Thank you, guys. You'll have a nice week.